I would like to welcome you to the biohacking panel. And a lot of people in the previous Congress were asking what does biohacking have to do with the topics that we talk about here, which is freedom, cryptocurrencies, and all this interesting stuff. And there will be more biohacking talks at this year's conference. But I would like to tell you what I think what is the relationship between biohacking and the other topics of this conference. And I think that we are all trying to increase our freedom, our liberty. And liberty starts in our bodies. If we cannot use them, if it doesn't work the way we want to, if we are too tired, or if we cannot get good enough sleep, then our freedom, our liberty to do anything else is affected a lot. So I think this is something that at least a lot of people in Parapolis in Bratislava are interested in. We have a biohacking cafeteria, which is also here in Prague. The Bitcoin Coffee is offering biohacking drinks and other stuff. So first of all, let me introduce our panelists today. Actually, I would like them to introduce themselves. So Mirek Nečas, Veronika Jelinkova, and Radek Pilich. Please tell us something about you, what you do.
Hi. Can you hear me? I'm not sure. Thanks. Nice to be here. I'm so excited. Hi, hackers. So my name is Mirek Nečas. My background is pro sports. I'm graduated as a teacher, so I'm working with elite sportsmen. For example, Red Bull guys, some national teams, some national guys. And my core is energy management. So this is mainly what I'm focused in biohacking.
Hi, I'm Veronika, and I'm a co-founder of Code of Life. That is a new platform for biohackers, and we are actually just started, so it's pretty fresh. Part of our project is also the Biohacker Center, which is going to be very similar to the House of Parapolis, just the same vision, that is freedom, but slightly different concept. And I specialize in sleep, so sleep hacking. This is my passion, and because I always had problems with sleep, so that's why I study that, and that's why I do some experiments with that. Yes.
Yeah. My name is Radek Pilich, and I'm not professionally or semi-professionally involved in biohacking as my colleagues are. I would call myself an amateur biohacker, if I would call myself a biohacker. I got into biohacker, let's say, some 15 years ago when I started experimenting with various food supplements, mostly because of my sensitivities I used to have. Whether it's sensitivities to food or sensitivities and dysregulation of mood, etc. So this was like my entry into it, and it became sort of hobby for me over time. More of a hobby where I can explore various things and learn about how the body works and explore various kind of venues of how to do something with it via tools and activities and how it responds. So it's like an interest of mine that keeps me engaged creatively, as well as necessity when I use it to help me regulate my moods and my sensitivities. So this would be probably my topic.
Okay, and I'm Juraj Bednár. I didn't introduce myself in the beginning because I'm here to ask questions, but I also started Czech and Slovak biohacker group, and we managed it together with Radek. So I like to invite people to share their experiences with biohacking, and for those of you who are on the Hackers Congress at the Hackers Congress and have never heard the word biohacking, I would like to start with this question. It was actually asked by Vlado Zlatoš, another biohacker that I know, and he asked me that if his grandmother is putting MCT oil into Nescafe, if she can call herself a biohacker already, or what is the criteria to become a biohacker, or what does it mean, and who is a biohacker? So my first question is, who do you think is a biohacker?
Ladies first, or I?
So are you asking me who do I think that is a biohacker, or what it is biohacking according to me?
Your choice.
Okay. So maybe I would start with what biohacking actually means for me. I think it's a very modern term. It's like, you know, when you ask me, what does it mean, psychology, for myself? So it's like a new field. But paradoxically, there's nothing new in it. It's, in my opinion, it's like a complex or holistic approach to human health, well-being, and performance. It's a systematic approach, and it's all about personal freedom. So you don't have to be a doctor or a PhD under some institution to become a biohacker and to hack or optimize your own biology from the comfort of your home. And I'm fascinated by this because I was very ill. And it's my journey with biohacking started 10 years ago because of my chronic diseases. And when I was waking up in a hospital on a regular basis, then there was a point where I said to myself, okay, so this is not working, so what can I do to take responsibility for my own health? And then, because I studied behavioral economics, I was close to neuroscience and psychology and all that. So then I started with experiments. I started with sleep. So I started to sleep. That was a good start. So yeah, so I think that this is biohacking for me, and everybody can become a biohacker and see, you can see your own biology, yourself from, you know, bigger picture, and to experiment, to test, because I don't believe in that there is one truth for all. So biohacking is not about recipes. It's about, you know, when you teach somebody to cook, you teach principles, but you don't give the recipes. And I think that's biohacking, that you actually learn yourself the principles about you, like what does it mean to be human, not only from the philosophical point of view, but also from the biological point of view.
I think it relates to my original answer to this question, which was another question: if anyone with a phone who can take a picture, are they already photographer? And the answer is you need to ask the person if they feel like a photographer. So I think biohacker is anyone who feels like a biohacker. So I don't think we need a strict definition, but why I asked this question, why I introduced it, is for the audience, for other people to kind of be able to grasp what it means, what we are talking about. So maybe I would rephrase it for Mirek a little bit.
Okay.
What does biohacker do? What are their actions? What is the difference between someone who would call him or herself biohacker and someone who doesn't?
Yep. I'm thinking, I think biohacking, what is it? On the left hand, we see a freedom. On the right hand, we see a discipline. For me, it's very necessary to thinking about my life, about my energy, and if I want to be more freedom, I must be more disciplined. And for example, biohacker preparing or tuning or hacking exterior things in your environment, for example, for good sleep routine. So change, for example, the color of the lights. And on the other hand, the inner environment, for example, in my microbiome. So there are two sides of one coin. So, and the definition, or I like the phrase, biohacking is ancient wisdom combined with Western medicine. For example, Asian wisdom, some pranayama, breathing techniques. It's, I don't know exactly, 3,000 years ago known. And now we can measure brain waves, for example, maybe 50 years, or I don't know exactly. So combining these two things, but leading to be more successful, to be more energetic, to be more happier. That's for me biohacking. So habits, discipline on the one hand, and it leads to be more freedom people, for example.
I would maybe add that it's also about looking at the environment in the way it used to be. So for example, these days, someone taking ice baths or cold showers would consider it biohacking, and 3,000 years ago, having an ice bath was the only bath you could have.
Normal thing.
So
in the cave.
Yeah. So also looking at the relationship between paleo, which is kind of living according to how we evolved in the ancient environment, and looking how the current environment is different. Would that be something that's I think personally, I think that is something that a biohacker would do, kind of compare current living conditions and see if they're matching what their body needs.
Sorry, once more the question.
So I just added that kind of understanding that our bodies evolved in different environment, which was a few thousand years ago, and it's not necessarily fine-tuned for current environment. So the question is, if a biohacker tries to adapt his environment to his body, to what the body needs. So probably the answer is yes, but that's what I thought I would add to your definition.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Radek?
So for me, biohacking personally is, as I mentioned before, similarly to Veronika, it was and still is a way to self-medicate myself, basically, after experiences with the current medical system, which often claimed me to be healthy with everything in check, although I was experiencing many symptoms. And biohacking was for me a way to learn about myself and to learn about human biology and to create hypotheses and do experiments and slowly but surely, often unsuccessfully, move forward somehow. And as I said before, it's also a hobby, a passion where I find a way to be explorative, to seek some novelty and get this sort of satisfaction where I learn through feedback and create basically tools and approaches for myself that I can use on daily basis in various situations. So based on this, for me, biohacking is really mostly about tools and activities that can be used to, let's say, first of all, learn about how our body functions, then to monitor what is the current state or what is our tendency, where are we moving, and then finally to to somehow intervene into it and help the body or push the body in the direction we want it to go in the current situation.
I think.
And sorry, if I may add one more thing, like generally, it's currently accepted and easy to kind of imagine that biohacking is a means to be energetic, be more productive, sleep better, and do these things that are kind of like obvious and kind of fulfill the criteria of what the current time and age demands of us. But I also think that for many people it might be simply a tool of, let's say, increasing the hedonistic experiences they have in life, or like for me, learning and exploring what happens if.
Great. I liked that you mentioned experiments, and I would like to say what I think the difference is between medical approach, medicine, and biohacking. So there are basically, in my opinion, two most important distinctions. One is experiment. So in medicine, you are doing things that are based on studies on hundreds of thousands of people, and you are trying to prescribe medical interventions that are generally accepted as usable. With biohacking, you are experimenting on the subset of one, which is you or me. And that means that biohackers are experimenters, and if something works for them, it doesn't necessarily need to work for anyone else. So it's a very experimental and personal approach. And the second thing which I got from Mirek's talk, or that was my impression, was that we are not only trying to be healthy, we are trying to be more than healthy. We are trying to be somehow better. So medicine, you know, if also as you said, you know, if you're in check, if all the results are green and all the test results are normal, then they send you home and you're fine. You can live your life. And biohacking for me is recognizing that that's not enough, and we can do better. We can have more energy, or be more relaxed, or be more creative, and we are looking for ways to improve ourselves even beyond being healthy. Even we want more of life. So my next question ties to... Oh, do you want to add something?
In my opinion, thanks. In my opinion, it's, for example, in today's and 21st century, you see we have so many possibilities in so many disciplines. And for me, biohacking, it's my choose lifestyle. I choose my life. I want to be responsible to my body, because it's really my only weight. Other stuff is nothing. Your body, it's my opinion, my mind, my spirit. These three combinations, it's my wealth. This is biohacking for me.
So you're basically improving your wealth by biohacking, because you're improving your only wealth that you have, which is your body, mind, and spirit. So I really like that. That really resonates with me. So I would like to ask, in a practical way, because this conference is about freedom, and if you are already healthy, how does biohacking improve your freedom? And if you have a specific example, that would be better from your experience. For me, just to give you an example, what I'm looking for, when I stopped eating gluten, I realized that I have more energy. I was not so bloated. I felt better, and I even lost some weight. So I felt better in my body, and that also meant because I had more energy that I could create more other things. So basically, it allowed me to use my time better, and that increased my wealth in form of energy and also freedom. So maybe Veronika, if you can, what biohack increased your freedom, for example?
Largely because I started with pain. So I had a pain and I was ill, and then I started to be healthy, and I realized, wow, I don't have a brain fog. That's great, you know. Then, because you adapt, you adapt to the environment and to everything. So then you wake up in the morning and you don't realize that if you are feeling good or not.
Sorry, for people who don't know, what is brain fog?
Okay, so simply you can imagine that you are tired and you have like, you feel a little bit dizzy in a simple way. So basically, biohacking increased my freedom in a way that when I started to have a pain, then I moved to be healthy. And from that point, you're like, wow, so how far can I go? And then you realize it's a never-ending story. And the more you hack yourself, the better you feel. Then you go back again because you fail many times, and obviously we're humans. But then you go more in deep and deep. And now I can say that when I feel stressed, I know what to do, because I know my body better than I knew 10 years ago. So I know that I can use some adaptogen herbs, for example, or that I can use some breathing techniques, or that I can do some ice cold exposures or whatever. But I know what works for me and what doesn't. So since I play with this, I don't go to doctors, I don't go to hospitals. I go either to just get some blood tests, but I don't need a doctor to explain me what the blood test means, because I've learned the markers, what it means, and what kind of markers I should measure for myself. But I'm not saying that doctors are bad. They're good for, you know, if I break my leg, I'm not gonna biohack that. You know, I will probably go to hospital and ask for help. But I'm talking about chronic illnesses or prevention mainly. So, yeah, I think that it mainly increased my freedom because I more understand myself. Paradoxically, sometimes it happens I don't know anything, and I am in a rabbit hole, and I'm like, well, why I'm here again? But you know, when you appear there, then you know that you have some tools. You're not there for years, but you're there for days, for example, and then you can go even deeper. So it's not like that your life will be forever beautiful and pink and amazing, but the mindset changes.
Oh, the question is about increasing freedom, right?
Yeah.
So I will keep it practical. Let's say talking about sensitivities people might have. If you are sensitive to the environment around you, because as Juraj said, this is very unnatural to human biology, and those of us that are sensitive might often find it overwhelming and taxing to an extent that we avoid certain situations and certain environments just to not be so taxed by it. So I went through a period of, let's say, stress burnout in my life. And after, like getting distance from the way I was living before, I started noticing the contrasts, which I haven't noticed before. Like, for example, when you walk into the metro in Prague, or if you go to the city center in Prague, if you have distanced yourself from it, you kind of feel how stressful it is suddenly. It's a contrast you haven't noticed before, but now suddenly, because you have been away from it, I can feel it. So, like, once I experience things like that, I can start looking for how to reduce these sort of stressors so that I don't get so taxed, or so I don't get annoyed and I don't lose my energy necessarily. So, for example, if I go to the city center now and if I have to, I don't know, run some errand and go to 4 places, spend 4 hours there arranging something, it's better for me to take like the musician earplugs you use for concerts, put them into my ears, and this reduction in the noise keeps me much more energized and much more focused, and generally provides me much better experience, so that environment is suddenly much more acceptable. Similarly, working on the computer, if I have to work on the computer for the whole days, on days at end, it's better for me to take glasses that block the blue light that is emitted from the monitor that makes my eyes tired, and use them in the afternoon. So again, I have more energy and less fatigue. And these are like easy things, easy tools I can have on hand and use them to reduce the sensitivities I have.
So freedom for me is biohacking, not only lifestyle but vacation.
I think your microphone doesn't work.
Check it. You are sure? Thanks. So I repeat it once more. Biohacking for me is not only a lifestyle, but 5 years ago I started biohacking as a vacation. So in my consultation, I am working with managers and athletes, and so this is one point. And the second point, maybe I take one example: the freedom. For example, in your body, everybody needs more energy. Is it right? Give me an answer. Do you want more energy, please? Okay, you are here. Thanks. Okay, so imagine we have 2 engines in our body. One engine is, it's very primitive. I don't say it in English very well. So imagine 2 engines. One is for sugar. Everybody is prepared for sugar, glucose, ATP, energy, and so on. So if you end it, the sugar engine, you are empty. You have no energy. Is it right? You know the states, such a brain fog, or how would say in English?
Or irritation,
lazy,
nervousness as well.
Uh-huh.
The hunger when you want to kill someone.
Exactly. I think in some marketing, is it some jokes? So, and imagine you have the second engine, the fat engine. How many people are using the fat as a primary fuel for your body? Okay, nice. And the rest? Okay, so the freedom is something what we call metabolic flexibility. Because if my sugar engine stops and I train my body to the fat, I have no these states as kill somebody for some Snickers or so on, because I switch my engine So that's the reason for me why biohacking helps, for example, in freedom.
Okay, thank you. I think you answered also my next question, so we will have more time, but I would like to ask you to so in many hacks in life hacking, we are looking for Pareto principles. So what is the 20% that we can do to have 80% effect? So what is the most impactful change that we can do? And most biohackers would mention at least nutrition, exercise, and sleep. You mentioned nutrition and metabolic flexibility. I think that's very important. And for most people, if they get this right, it's 80% of their of the result. I don't know if you agree, but of course, unless you damage something and you have other problem. Veronika has been hacking sleep, and sleep is also very important. So tell us how you hacked sleep and what does it mean to experiment in sleep? You know, do you go to bed early and sleep 1 hour longer, or what does it mean to improve this and how to do it?
Well, for me, hacking sleep, it's not about sleeping longer, but it's about to hack the quality of my sleep. Because sometimes I don't have the opportunity to sleep 8 or 9 hours. Sometimes I sleep 4 or 5 hours. Not saying it's optimal, but for me, I know how it works, and from my own biology. And very specifically, I do a lot of experiments, and I would say that my favorite one is, so first of all, okay, we can start from the beginning, like you should hack your bedroom and the blue light, like you said. Then I have a gravity blanket, for example, at home. Have you ever heard about that, about gravity blanket?
I used it for 2 nights and I don't like it.
Really?
I have one extra if someone wants.
Well, for me, it's a magic. It's a magic blanket. Basically, it's 10% of your body weight, so it's quite heavy. Mine is 6 kilos, and it's. I mean, you cannot travel with that. It's quite impractical. But when I'm at home, it's like you feel some sort of like a security, if you want. It was designed for autistic kids, and then people just went to the Kickstarter, and it seems like a lot of people need it, not only autistic kids. So I think that in ancient times, or in American Indians, they used how you call it, the skin of the animals, and all that. So it's quite heavy, and you feel really secure. So this gravity blanket, for me, apparently not for everybody, it's a great hack because I feel the security. So that's one thing. Then of course darkness and all that. But I wanna actually share with you one specific tools that I use, and that is it's a natural supplements, and one of them is Mucuna pruriens, which is basically well known as a velvet bean used in Ayurvedic medicine, especially to treat Parkinson's disease. Have you ever heard about that? Who has? Mucuna pruriens, yeah, so few, great. So this velvet bean is it's adaptogen, so it helps your body handle stress better, in a simple terms, and it is high in L-dopa, which is precursor to dopamine, and that is very important for your mood and libido, if you want, sex drive, focus, motivation, but also for your sleep. So for me, these beans, I would say that when I measure my sleep with this little thing, I can see that my REM sleep and my deep sleep actually increased by 100%, which is for me incredible, because that has never happened before, and I could hack it in any kind of way. But with this, it's really, I don't know if it's just for me. You should try it yourself, but it's very special. And with that, I use some adaptogens, or like you know, herbs, like rhodiola, for example, is well known. You probably know it. And L-tyrosine, which is amino acid, and acetylcysteine, which is another amino acid. So to fix my receptors. I don't want to go too much in deep in this, but I just want to share that there are, you know, a lot of toys like this that you can find in nature, but those molecules are also in your brain. So when these molecule meets with that's in your brain, you know, it's not. It's basically very, I would say, a natural process for us. So, for example, this L-dopa that is in this magic beans is already inside of your brain. So what you just do is that you help, it's like you have workers outside and you just help to produce your dopamine. You know, very, very, very simple. I don't really... You know, I used to be like, that I didn't like any supplements, and I was just, you know, I have to do it by myself, and it's enough to just have these cold exposures and doing these breathing techniques and do meditation and all that. And I still do, of course, and it's great, but, you know, as Mirek said, we live in the age of, or you said that actually as well, you know, it's... this is not really natural environment for human biology, let's face it. So if we wanna be more than healthy, I believe that we should, or not should, but we can, you know, experiment and play with supplements or herbs. And especially here in the Czech Republic, we have a lot of herbs. They are pretty cool. So we don't have to use like very expensive nootropic drugs and, you know, so I would say
we
that
can if we want.
we can, but I think that there are, when we talk about the Pareto principle, I would say that the most important 20% is nutrition, that affects sleep as well, exercise, of course, darkness, some, you know, harmonize your stress levels and hormones, and you can do that with these toys, like with herbs, and just play with that. But I think one important thing is to have a baseline. Like I started with fasting, and you know, if you don't know your body, then you can add anything, but you're not gonna feel any difference. So I started to do fasting, and then you mentioned that with these intolerances as well. Like then you realize, okay, so now I can add this food or this. But how does it feel? Now I can actually see that my body doesn't like it, so maybe, you know, I'm allergic to some of that. So I would start with that, so that I know where I am, and then I can add some other things, and ideally not to mix everything all together. So I have my book of experiments, and I track myself. And even this velvet bean, I don't take more than 4 times a week. No longer than 3 months in a row. And then I have, you know, even half year or even 1 year, I have a break, and then I start something else. So
that's really really good approach, and I think that our bodies like noise. I would say noise, randomness. So I personally also don't like taking the same supplement every day. I think that if you teach your body with more randomness, and you allow it to improve and overcompensate, and that's how you can grow actually. So so if someone wanted to hear that the best biohack is snorting a line of cocaine every morning, that's not what I would recommend. Not judging, but that probably would be a very downward slope. But what I would like to also add is I really liked how you talked about baseline, and the question is, how do we know if it's working? And you showed your ring that measures your sleep and your movement. And I think for experiments that we do, it is a good idea to think about how do I know if it's working? Because if you read a description of a supplement, it has all the benefits, cures cancer, you'll have more energy, everything, and then you pay a lot of money and eat supplements, and you don't know if it's doing anything. So actually looking at how you can measure if something is improving and have a working theory of that is quite important. So devices, you can use your smartphone to track your sleep as well if you don't have a ring or a watch or any other device. What you can also do is take blood tests. Also subjective feeling is very very useful. Remember, you're not doing experiments that work on 100,000 people. What is important is how you personally feel. So, maybe last, if you have one last Pareto hack, and then we can ask the audience. If you don't, we can ask audience right away.
Okay, so to be short, I think sleep is really important for majority of people. Probably more important than exercise and nutrition, which was quite popular for last decades. But sleep now is getting the focus it deserves, and you don't really notice the difference of how impactful sleep can be until you experience it on yourself, and ideally with the benefit of having something like the Oura Ring or some other sleep monitor that really shows you like what's happening in your sleep. And beyond the sleep, for me, probably the word baseline was mentioned here several times, or some sort of like default. And I think it's really important if you want to start with biohacking, trying things, to find your stable baseline. If you are having problems with, shifting, changes in your attention, changes in your energy, changes in your mood throughout the days, weeks, months, years, then it's probably best to focus on stabilizing that first before, like trying to get strong or trying to be super focused for the purpose of working on something and then burning out from it.
We have a question.
Okay. So you mentioned that the sleep is very important. And the question is, how do you measure it? How do you measure the quality of sleep? And what kind of tools would you recommend?
Okay.
That is a question on who? Like to all of us?
Probably on you, Veronika.
Okay. So I measure sleep currently with this. Do you know it? It's an Oura Ring. And it has 3 sensors. So it basically measures you 24/7. It measures your temperature and your HRV. And basically, you wake up in the morning, and what I do is not to be dependent on the technology. I ask myself, how do I feel? Like, do I feel that I slept enough or not? Then I answer myself, and then I look at the graphs, and I can see how long I was in a REM sleep. That is very, very important for us. How long I was in a deep sleep. That is also very, very important for us. and how long I was in a light sleep. That is not so important. So when I do some experiments, I can see that, for example, my light sleep decreased and my deep sleep increased. So, you know, this is, for example, one way how you can measure that. There are also probably more accurate gadgets than Oura Ring. One of them is Dream, which is something that you put on your on your head and you go to sleep. That is not really for me, but it has also EEG in it, so it measures some other different factors. So it depends what you wanna measure, but for myself, this is the best way now because I can, you know, it's very it's nice actually. You know, it's you don't really know about it. It's a ring. And yeah, it measures some very basic markers that you can use for seeing like if your experiments are good or not. But I wouldn't be dependent on it 100% because your subjective feeling is very important too. So what I do is I have a notebook and I write it down, and then I can see like what do I feel and what it shows me. If that answered your question.
Mirek, you mentioned being metabolically flexible.
Yeah.
Would you say that you reached that state?
Sorry, once more.
Would you say that you reached that state? That you are metabolically?
I'm trying.
You are trying, okay. Because my question was going to be, how long did it take from being fat adapted and running on fat versus sugar to getting to the flexibility? And if you have sugar or some carbs while you are fat adapted, do you get, like, are most of the negative side effects cut off, or what's this flexibility like?
Yep. So the first part, I think you are talking about time. So, for example, I'm trying it 5 years, maybe. So we are talking about the Pareto principle. Yeah, I eat carbs, definitely, maybe 20% around. But 80% I'm fuel for fat and for proteins. And if I take some statistics about, for example, Western medicine from USA, 1% of your Juraj, how would say buňky, cells?
Cells.
Yeah, you change 1% of cells every day. So to transform your lifestyle, you cancel 3 months old habit, and you build new one of 3 months. So together it will be around 6 months, but it must be definitely a really hard-working commitment, personal commitment. So, but it's not much recommendation. I think if we want a really change in our life, we must atomic steps, tiny habits, only 1% one day. So we're talking about the months, maybe 6 months, maybe 1 year, but I guarantee you are more freedomly, not only addict for sugars and carbs.
I would also add that you can actually measure metabolic flexibility in many ways, and one of the ways is just don't eat for 2 days, and you can feel the difference. If you're not adapted to fat, that this will be very difficult, and you will see it. But also by doing that, you are improving it. The other way is using spirometry or some ketone tests. Spirometry is load dependent, so that so you're basically breathing into a machine, and you're running on the bike or on a treadmill with increasing load. And by the ratio of oxygen and CO2, the machine can measure if you are burning or fermenting. So it will basically show you a graph if you are burning carbs or fats, and under which load. So at some point, even if you're well adapted, you cannot burn more fat because you cannot breathe enough oxygen, and then you need to switch to fermenting carbohydrates. But when you see this graph, this is something that you can improve. So you can do it once, then you do experiments, train, and you can do it in a half year or year and see actually the improvement that is again dependent on the load. So I don't think that there's a universal answer. For some people it is very natural, for some people it takes a longer time, but you can see the progress and you can see if you're actually getting anywhere. So that's...
May I? And just one more thing, just simple, a tiny rule. How you think, how you feel after the whatever meal. It's for everybody. We can measure HRV, we can measure everything, heart rates, brain waves, the glucose. So, but I think it's a Western style. It's a hard gadgets, and the ancient wisdom how we feel. If I take 300 grams of pasta, how I feel? Brain fog, and I'm lazy. Do you want lazy? I don't want. Easy.
Hi. My name is, I'm here. My name is Andrew Durham. I'm from the US. And I came to Czech Republic for 3 reasons. I wanted to ask you quickly first, have you all done Darkroom Retreats?
Yes.
No.
I did.
You haven't? Have you?
Sorry, I don't speak.
Dark therapy.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I wrote a book about this after working with it for 10 years. And I came to Czech Republic because it is the world capital of darkroom retreating. There's more going on here than anywhere else in the world by far. And I came to do a retreat and also to find out why so much stuff is going on here with darkroom retreating. So since that's like one of my top 3 reasons for being in this country, I thought I would ask you folks.
So what is the question?
Why do you think so much, this is very specific of course, I appreciate many other things that you've talked about, but why do you think so much is going on with darkroom retreating in your country?
It's interesting. I didn't know that we are actually on the number 1. You did?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I have a tip because I think Czech Republic in 60s they were really big. How would say in English? The Stanislav Grof. It's you know Stanislav Grof.
Holotropic breath work.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it starts very big psycho tests in 60s in the army. And so many people, as an amateur, as a scientist, preparing some tests in psychology and combine with physics. So maybe from the 60s, if you imagine, for example, in the sports with the doping. So I think we have a strong chemical background in Czech 50, 60 years ago.
I think it might has a little bit to do with the fact that people in here, we have a history of spending a lot of time in nature, or generally people going into nature for hikes, as well as like having the history of quote unquote natural medicine, or like the old grannies that use various herbs, etc., to treat illnesses at home. And maybe this is somehow affecting it. For example, you said that we are like the capital of the world for this. We here are wearing the Vivo barefoot shoes, And for example, Vivo barefoot shoes, like they sell half of their production probably in Czech Republic as well. So that's like another trend that is completely out of proportion in here than in other countries. Similarly, people wearing outdoor clothes in the cities. That's something like that's not generally happening in other major cities around in other countries, but in here it's somehow normal. So I think there is some sort of history of people having close relationships with tourism and spending weekends in cottages and nature, this sort of thing.
Okay, thank you. Before we take another question.
Well, I don't know actually. I don't know why Czech Republic is number one in this, but it's definitely interesting phenomena. So thank you for this information. I think that, you know, a lot of people, we live in a fast-growing world, but I would say that that is everywhere. That is not only here in the Czech Republic. So I don't know. Yeah. But I will think about it. Thanks. It's something to think about. Yeah.
So some of you are leaving, so that's what I wanted to say. If you want to see another talk, feel free to leave. But because there is nothing in this room after this talk, if you want to stay and continue with discussion, we are still here. So I'll just, you know, entertain you for a few seconds until we continue. So, but it's your choice.
Yes, Juraj, we could do some breathing technique. What do you think?
Mirek, breathing technique.
Yeah, you know, my colleague...
Definitely.
My colleague Libor, he actually invented a few days ago very, very interesting technique. You would love it. It's like, yeah, you feel like on LSD a little bit. Like, you know, it's very interesting. And it's like a shortcut. Like you have the Wim Hof method, and then you have this, and it's like a shortcut to... You will see, I will show you. It's great.
Cool. I'm just curious.
To je jako, je to síla.